Hello, welcome to Let's Write This Movie. I am René Garcia.
And I am Brian Glass.
And this is episode 1, the first episode of a movie script that I'm writing called Epitaph. But before we get into that, I think we should talk about what this project is and what we're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely.
Once again, my name is René, and I am a struggling, aspiring screenwriter. I love writing movies. I love watching movies. And lately, I haven't had any inspiration or the time to write. And I have my friend here, Brian, who encouraged me to start this project so that I had some kind of accountability, not just to myself, but also to him and to the strangers on the internet. So the plan is for me to write roughly 10 pages a week, post them on our website, letswritethismovie.com, and everyone on the internet can read what I wrote and offer critiques and suggestions and corrections for anything that it might be an anachronism or just plain wrong. And then every Saturday, hopefully, Brian and I will meet to discuss and go over his notes as well as the notes from the internet. Brian, did I miss anything?
No, I think other than the fact that you and I have known each other for many years, and I think that there's a mutual respect that has always been there between the two of us in any capacity. And we've worked in the past on some other projects. A little bit about myself. I am not the writer. I have an English, degree, but it's very different than being able to write creatively. He's the guy who does that. I'm the guy who just tries to keep him in check. So I would consider myself a thoughtful movie fan. I love critiquing and reviewing, and in working with René in the past, we worked on a possible podcast fiction series, which we may get into at some point. But it was a really nice and useful collaboration, and we tend to riff off each other and, take each of the ideas that we come up with separately, really match and meld into something a little bit better. So I'm hoping that is what we get out of this project as well.
Me too. Let me just say that as a writer, and I think every writer out there will be able to sympathize with this feeling, sharing a first draft is terrifying. So I'm just hoping I'm going to be able to turn out some decent pages that won't be excoriated by everybody.
Yeah, if it is, then we'll turn off comments.
Oh no, we're never going to do that. Okay.
It's interesting. You kind of mentioned a little bit about the purpose of this show, and you and I have talked about it a while ago, when we first discussed it. But I just kind of want to get it out there that I've read several of your scripts, and both short and, full long form. And I'm a big fan of your writing. You know that, but they don't know that yet. So I would say that René, as a person, has a very unique, I hate those words together, has a unique view of the world. And I'm always eager to see that voice or hear that voice in any medium. So, the reason that I was pushing for this show is because I want to read more, and other projects, unfortunately, tend to sideline output sometimes, and I wanted to read. I wanted to keep reading, this, from you, René. And I felt like it was something that the world needs to see, needs more of, so that's kind of what it was about for me. And I thought it would be kind of interesting and maybe somewhat frightening and very vulnerable to write a script out in the open. So, viewers and listeners can read the script as it comes along. So it should be a really interesting and fun experience. I hope it's a fun experience and hopefully not too difficult.
It will be difficult. I can already see that. Fun, that's a secondary objective for me. I just want to have a compelling story that has mass appeal. Maybe not too broad of an appeal, but something that reaches beyond you and me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so one last thing I want to get out there before we dive into what we're going to discuss today. I typically write things about things that I have personal knowledge of, or it either has to be personal knowledge or it has to be completely fantastical where no one has any knowledge of it, in which case I'm free to write whatever. So the topic or the story that I'm writing in this script is more or less historical, and that's going to be a challenge for me because I'm very bad with history, and this is where I'm hoping I can lean on the internet community to, I wouldn't say fact check necessarily, but be able to provide the detail that I would be lacking. That's not to say we're not going to attempt to do a research, but given that we have a pretty steady clip here of how often I'm going to be turning in pages, the research is going to suffer. So everyone just be prepared for that. Brian, anything to add there?
I'm not really too concerned about it. I mean, to me, it's the story is going to carry the day. The historical period is just going to provide a little bit of the you give me the look.
Well, I'm just saying.
Of the backdrop. So I really think it's going to be more about characters and emotion, things like that. And we'll make sure we hit those other points, but I'm more interested in what happens rather than some of the historical things. Although I will say, as a preview, there are some things I'm going to bring to the table for today to kind of help, fill in those blanks a little bit.
No, exactly. The problem for me is that I'm having these characters do things that I don't know would be feasible in this time period.
Right.
So if it doesn't make sense, I mean, my grasp of history is like this cartoon history in my mind. Like, oh yeah, this is the size of a train or whatever. And that may not be the case. So, I guess we should talk about the logistics of what we're doing today. So going forward after today, it's going to be a section of pages of a script. And like I said, it may be 10 pages. I'm not sure. But for today, because I kind of wanted to give everybody a roadmap of where the story is going. That way there is a little bit of predictability to, what they're reading and people will know where we are within the story. Today is just a very rough outline of what I have in store for, we'll say, at least the main character. And this is all subject to change.
Yeah, and it's interesting you said that because, we talked about this project. I think it's really been a few months now since we've talked about it. And now we're getting, to do the first recording. And there have been things that have been building in my mind that I want to ask you about. And I've waited until today, right now, live to get that out. So question about your process a little bit, because I've seen I've listened to podcasts, I've watched things on YouTube and whatnot in terms of other people's processes, and they're all a little bit different. What's yours typically? I mean, do you write an outline? Do you write from start to finish, certain scenes? I mean, give us a little bit of a inside look at your process of screenwriting. Well,
I'm going to say right off the bat, this is probably the wrong way to write anything that's a long story. I basically imagine iconic scenes, and if they move me emotionally, if I think they are scenes that would grip an audience, then I start building a story around those scenes and decide, okay, how did these characters get here? Is there we'll say a mini iconic scene that I could build off of that then reaches to the bigger scene? And then if this isn't the climax, where does this iconic scene fit within a larger story arc? And that's basically it. So I really spend a lot of time just probably just walking around with this story in my head and just seeing where puzzle pieces fit. Now, from other screenwriters that I've I don't know if I would characterize it as following, but just the little bits of wisdom that they've shared with me from the things I've either heard or read, the blogs I've read. That is definitely not the way to write. Like, you definitely want to outline everything, and so you can see where your gaps are and research the hell out of all of the different things that you need to know so that the writing can be fluid. Yeah. And, it's not going to be this herky-jerky experience that we're all going to have to endure over the next few months with me.
Me. Well, I guess that's part of my role in this as well, is to, help collaborate on the project, not just edit what you're doing, but help guide, to the goals that you've outlined for everyone to see, and, make sure we don't get too far off task, and recommend ideas and get shot down as necessary. And, but me, I'm always one who's going to come up with something and maybe good, bad, or absolutely terrible. But I think it might be, an interesting way to write something. I don't know how else you would do that necessarily in a format that's episodic for YouTube. So I think this will be an interesting exercise. But, the other thing it kind of brings to mind is like the sanctity of intellectual property. I mean, do you have any trepidation about putting something out there that is not finished or copywritten, or I'm not really sure exactly about the mechanics of that, but basically putting something out there before someone else has picked it up?
There is a little bit of trepidation, from the few contacts I have in Hollywood. Script ideas get stolen all the time. So, I don't know. I mean, even this happens to people who are like fully protected, like people who know the industry. So, I don't know how much protection I can actually give myself here, other than doing, the practical things like copywriting the story, registering with the Writers Guild. But, I also can't deny the experiences that people are sharing with me when they're talking about how studios have, just ripped off their idea, changing a few things here and there that I guess covers them legally. But, I don't know how else to answer that. I'm not going to let it stop me from doing this. My dreams of being a professional screenwriter are more or less, dead. So if I can at least see my idea on screen, even though I'm not getting a credit, maybe that's all I can expect to have in this life.
I'd very much like for you to have a credit, but I guess that's the next step after this part's done.
Well, hopefully we can crowdfund the retainer fee for a high-priced entertainment lawyer.
There you go. There you go. And we'll have the Wayback Machine, so we can all say, "See, it was right there."
Well, I mean, like I said, I have the copyright, so.
All right, there you go. All right. Well, just from my vantage point, my only real trepidation in this project is that we are recording live with no cuts. So, as I mentioned many times, this should be interesting, but whatever. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and if this gets really bad and disjointed, then maybe there will be
a new co-host.
Maybe a solo project, or it'll just be a pilot episode. Okay, Brian, are you ready? Ready to dive into the synopsis?
So, no. I have another question about this. Just in terms of genre, you mentioned it early on to me, kind of where you were going, but can you just give us an idea of what that's going to be? And I have a few thoughts about it I want to share with as well.
It's a horror, and maybe action horror.
Okay, action horror. Because you mentioned it before, Western horror, so that's why.
Well, it's set in the West, the Old West, so it is. It has Western themes.
Okay. Yeah, and what's interesting. This is how I'm approaching this project. René knows my history with Westerns, as an example. Unforgiven.
Love it.
Widely considered, most people loved it. Widely considered one of the best, of the Westerns out there. And I had the audacity to fall asleep at the theater during the movie. Of course, it was very early in the morning, but still, just not my thing. Tombstone, which René actually shared with me. I loved that. That was fantastic. Hateful Eight. I thought that was a really good movie as well.
I mean, yes.
Hey, man.
I've never seen it.
Oh, I really enjoyed it. And then I know we have the element of horror that's in here. Do you mind if I mention?
That's fine.
Okay, so the fact that we're going to be introducing zombies, I'm not a huge zombie fan. With maybe Shaun of the Dead, I like something like that, but it's lighter fare. I've seen like World War Z and I Am Legend, but a lot of the zombie movies I just haven't even seen. I'm not really like a gore fan. I tried watching The Walking Dead, just couldn't get into it. It's just too much for me. And I really like
gore.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Just not my thing. It's like gore porn or something. I just, I couldn't get into it. Yeah.
okay.
But like Westworld, I've enjoyed that, but I keep falling asleep because of the pace of the show. It's like, I really enjoy, this is really good. It's put me to sleep. So for me, it's kind of like we're kind of combining Westerns and horrors, two genres that I'm just not huge fans of either of them. So if you can make a great script that I love, I'm telling you, man, I'm like your hardest critic in this piece. So I think that if you're looking for broad appeal, I'm probably your audience in this.
Okay. Did you like From Dusk Till Dawn?
Yeah, love From Dusk Till Dawn.
This is essentially the same concept.
Okay.
You think you're watching one movie, and it becomes another movie.
Just so you know, now I've got the lead character, which doesn't make any sense. It's not George Clooney, but that's where my head just went. For this, it probably wouldn't be.
Okay. Well, no, it's not going to be George Clooney. It better not be. No, Hollywood. Hollywood does have a track record of doing that.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, the audience will understand what I'm talking about in a second.
Very
okay,
soon.
Brian, anything else before we jump into the synopsis?
Let's go for it.
How are we doing this, by the way?
Give it a read.
We're going to read it?
I think we kind of have to, don't you think?
Oh, you know what I need to do, Brian?
What's that?
I need to pull up the synopsis so that it displays. 2 seconds, people. 2 seconds. Technical difficulties. No cuts. What are you talking about?
We don't need cuts.
Cuts everywhere.
No cuts.
All right. Look at that. Professional. The best podcast on the internet.
You can only get better, my friend.
It's episode 1. What do you want?
Yeah.
We're going to look back when this is all over. Episode 3, when we've given up. We'll look back fondly on episode 1.
20 pages in.
Exactly. Okay, so I guess I'm just going to read it, Brian?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, fantastic. Long and his brother are Chinese train robbers in Arizona, 1869. They are being tracked by an intrepid U.S. Marshal who has been trying to bring them to justice for 10 years. After another successful train robbery, Long and his brother ride to the silver mining boom town of Epitaph, where the Marshal and his posse have set up a trap for them. Fortunately for Long and his brother, they know a secret way into town. Unfortunately, Long runs into the Marshal, who confronts Long in the street, and they draw pistols on each other. But Long senses the Marshal's men, and a fierce firefight ensues. Long's brother is killed in the exchange, but Long is able to kill the entire posse except for the Marshal. Now out of bullets, Long is essentially defenseless as the Marshal approaches with gun drawn. Unable to kill a defenseless man, the Marshal arrests Long and puts him in a cell at the local jail. While Long waits to be transported to another state for his crimes, that should say events. Events, my editor, Brian. Events are happening around town. A snake oil salesman sells a dubious elixir of immortality to some townsfolk. A man is bitten by a rabid dog that was eating another dog. A meteor flies overhead at night, crashing into the stake of a couple of out-of-luck prospectors who consider the meteorite as a precious metal. The snake oil salesman is killed by Indian bandits on his way out of town, and his cart full of liquids falls into the local water supply. The Indians are captured and quickly tried and sentenced to hang. During the hanging, the last Indian curses the land, invoking the spirits of his ancestors to rise and avenge him. Lastly, a sick soldier is carted off by his comrades to the local military fort, where military doctors will care for him. Okay, before I continue reading, so, Brian, do you see what's happening here in this paragraph, where these different events are happening around town, and any one of them could be the cause of the zombie outbreak.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wasn't aware.
It wasn't clear why all these weird things are happening. Okay.
I was like, wow, that is a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. So the idea was, if you watch zombie movies throughout time, they're always, it's never explained where the zombies came from. And sometimes it's like, something like a meteorite or a satellite flying overhead. Something falls in the water supply. I saw one movie where an Indian did curse the land, and the undead, or the spirits of the dead, were supposed to rise up and avenge his tribe. And of course we have like rabid dog. So I want to leave it up to the audience as to what caused this thing. I just, want these different things to happen.
Got it.
Okay. When the soldiers arrive, they report that the sick soldier has died, but when they check on him, he stands and attacks 3 soldiers, biting them. The sick soldier is killed with a bullet to the head, but the bitten soldiers begin attacking others. It takes an entire line of soldiers in formation with rifles to kill all the bitten soldiers. The commanding officer makes the decision to contain the source of the affliction at Epitaph. It's the dead of night at the town. Various townsfolk are dying and coming back to life inexplicably. The undead manifest in different ways. Some run, some walk, some spit. The horses are spooked and run off into the dark, leaving townsfolk more or less stranded. So let's pause here. I personally like slow walking zombies, but in order to, I think modern audiences, I think they're more or less adjusted to, like the 28 Days Later athletic Olympian zombies, marathon running zombies.
World Zombie or
World War Z zombies.
World War Z, yeah. Yeah.
You don't like that? You don't like that idea, Brian?
I'm going to refrain for a few minutes.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to have a little bit of variety. This is something that can change as the script progresses. So, okay. The Marshal returns to the jail, which is in the center of the large town, to free Long and get him to safety. Along the way, they meet other survivors and finally reach one of the town entrances. They see bonfires have been lit to form a perimeter around the town by the soldiers. Some townsfolk run to the soldiers to be saved, but they are gunned down instead. Soldiers begin throwing torches at buildings. When Long and the survivors pause to consider their options, some survivors notice Long is the Marshal's prisoner and question the Marshal's decision to keep Long with them. Long explains their history. 15 years ago, when Long and his brother were helping build railroads, using dynamite to blast through mountains, Long's brother was severely beaten by a foreman. So this is all stuff I have no knowledge of. Gonna need someone to tell me if this is how it works. Long retaliated against the foreman, but accidentally killed him. He and his brother fled, riding off on one of the munitions carts loaded with dynamite and small arms. They became outlaws. They taught themselves how to shoot pistols and rifles and how to speak English fluently. Then they used dynamite to blow up the tracks they built and began robbing trains. During one robbery where Long and his brother, Brian, not Long and brother, Long and his brother planned to blow up a bridge. Long's brother used too long of a wick, and the bridge collapsed too late for the engineer to stop the train. The Marshal was on that train with his wife and child. As passenger cars began plummeting, the Marshal was spared because he was in baggage looking for his child's teddy bear. His wife made a valiant effort to run to the rear of the train with their child, but arrived just in time to lock eyes with the Marshal as she and their child fell to their deaths. The Marshal has been trying to bring Long to justice ever since. Now, flashing back, what's up, Brian?
That was like your most impassioned part of the read.
Well, you can tell where the iconic scenes were in my mind. Okay, so bringing us back to present day, relatively. Long remembers the secret passage he used to sneak into town and shares the plan with the others. They decide to tool up at the local gun shop and fight their way back to the saloon on the other side of town. They wade through the undead, losing some survivors on the way. Only a handful make it to the saloon, including Long, the Marshal, and a widow and her child. The secret passage is blocked by debris and needs to be broken through with an axe. Long and the Marshal take turns breaking through while other survivors try to hold off the undead spilling into the saloon. Long and the Marshal break through, but as the Marshal turns to pull the widow and her child in, the undead horde yank them away and devour them in front of the Marshal's eyes. Long drags the Marshal away to the horses Long and his brother left just outside of town. Long is about to mount his horse and ride off when the Marshal reminds him that he can't let Long get away. They have one last pistol duel against the backdrop of a burning town, and Long shoots the Marshal in the stomach. The Marshal slumps to the ground, and Long rides off into a sunrise. But as Long fades into the distance, the Marshal rises as an undead.
Cue Epitaph 2.
Oh, yeah. I got a trilogy, baby.
Franchise is born.
Exactly. I actually do have the trilogy idea already.
There you go. I'm sure you do. How long have you actually been holding this idea?
Oh, I don't know, a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just haven't had the time or the inclination to write it.
Now you have one.
Hooray.
That was inclination, not time for you
Oh,
viewers.
I know.
We didn't get it.
I know, Brian.
For the viewer folk.
Oh.
Yeah. They may not have understood that.
Got it.
Cool. Yeah. I think that's a good synopsis and entry into the, into where the script's going. Of course, when I read it, all these gears start turning and I've got nothing but questions because, how much can you put into a synopsis?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to be judicious about that. And you said early on that this is one character's journey that you're writing in the synopsis.
Yeah. Just for the watching audience, I tend to make my stories really complex with a lot of intertwining relationships and histories. And, that's why we're probably going to hit and go over 120 pages.
We're probably going to do all 3 movies right now.
Hell yeah.
It's the 400, this is going to be Lord of the Rings.
Exactly.
Let's split this up. So do you mind if I just dive into some comments about this?
Do it.
All right. So, I think it's a really cool idea. And even though there's not any color on here yet, I could definitely see the whole thing in my head in terms of like how it's going to play out. So I think it's very clear, and I think it's an interesting story. I'm going to go ahead and just, as I mentioned on the phone the other day, I took a closer look at the timeline just to kind of get myself oriented.
Yeah.
Because you did set this in my now adopted home state of Arizona, and I was just kind of curious about how that played into the script. So I did look at kind of the history of Arizona, and I'm not sure how much you want to actually incorporate that into it. But in 1869, actually for a long time, Arizona was the territory of Arizona, not the state until 1912, because we're so far west, we didn't incorporate for a long time. And based on kind of what you're playing with here, it seems like around the early 1880s would be a good time, because that's when that's not when the territory was established. It was established in 63, but the railroad across southern Arizona was in 1881. So I'm thinking if they want to be train robbers, have been doing it for a few years, it might want to be like the 80s, somewhere in there. And it plays into what you mentioned before, which is the Age of Silver. And also plays into the Apache Wars. So your Indians, I don't know if you had a specific delineation of Indian, but it might want to be Apaches for that reason.
Well, I did research an extinct Indian tribe within the Southwest. I don't know if they were in Arizona or not, but it made sense to me to use this extinct, I can't remember the tribe name, I have it written down somewhere, where, if you killed this last guy, he was the last of his tribe, and that's why his ancestors were going to rise up, right?
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be that. I just threw that in for color.
Right. No, I think that's cool. So this doesn't, like I said earlier, at least in this draft of the synopsis, it doesn't really play too much into it. The only thing that I also kind of bumped on was that he's waiting to be transported to another state.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure like how many states there are in the Southwest at that time. I think there are a few. But you could also consider maybe like Phoenix as an example, because, you know, that's not like a quick romp. You know what I mean? Because they just incorporated at this time, where you can go to the state capital, which is Tucson, which is it's still in this time of day, this time of history, that was a pretty long, it was too far for horses certainly to get to, so they had to get there by train. So just something to kind of pepper into
that's a very good concern, and thank you for spotting that. So here's the thing. The Indian who gets hanged in town, I assume he gets tried. They don't just hang him, right? Oh, we got this Indian who was killing people. String him up. And if they hang him without a trial, why wouldn't they hang our protagonist Long? So I had to, write some convention that would require Long to be transported somewhere else to, I don't know, answer for his crimes in a different jurisdiction, or this is where the majority of his crimes took place.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works, but we need there to be a reason that the Indian guy gets killed and his Confederates, the little band of Indian bandits or whomever he's with, those people get killed immediately. Why does Long not get killed immediately?
Right. Yeah. Maybe that flashback scene took place like in Tucson, where Tucson was. So they have to go back and he's extradited to the city of the original crime or something. Whereas everyone else has their local jurisdiction for their local crimes. So there's like a warrant from the very beginning that is outstanding. And that's when he's been traveling. The Marshal's been chasing him all this time around Arizona.
Yeah. Does that make sense though? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Well, here's the thing, folks. All I'm aiming for is it plausible? Does it make sense enough?
Movie sense.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I'll tell you, when we get to the actual script pages that talk about that, I'll take a real deep dive into it.
All right.
I will. But anyway.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just going to be like 3 pages of the Marshal explaining the law. Section 3.1 of the Arizona statute of whatever.
Hey, Renee, just when you get to that point, just write in parentheses, insert scene here.
Exactly.
That's kind of our thing.
Exactly.
All right. So, can you give me a little more information about the town? Because, you mentioned earlier, your sense of history comes from cartoons. My history, I know you're joking, but my history comes kind of like from movies. You know what I mean? So
well, that's what I mean.
This isn't what a Western town looks like, you know?
No, exactly. It's the same thing. What I meant to say is that my history is cartoonish.
Right.
It's a writer's version. It's a creative writer's version of what history is.
Yeah. And so when I think of Westerns at this time, I think of the typical Western town, which is a few buildings, lining a single road.
Yeah.
And, but you mentioned this is a large town.
Right.
And then I'm trying to, in my head, understand, well, if this is a large town, I've got this notion in my head of what this Western town looks like. But then you mentioned it's secluded. And you also mentioned that there's a secret entrance. I'm like, secret entrance? I mean, isn't between every building an entrance into town, for this movie version of a Western town. So I'm wondering what you're thinking here.
Okay. So I'm thinking it's got to be a town that probably would never exist in the Old West, but I'm hoping that because it's next to a silver mine and it seems to be a prosperous area, that it's drawing a lot of traffic. And so let's say 500 to 1,000 people in this town. And that to me is already pretty big.
Yeah.
For an out of the way desert town.
Okay.
I had imagined, and once again, don't know if this it coincides with reality, but I had imagined because this is an area that has a lot of Native American activity, hostile Native American activity, that they would have built some kind of like fortification in at least parts of the town. So it's not like just a bunch of loose buildings,
Okay.
that you can just like walk through, right? While I imagine the majority of the town will have that look and feel, I do also expect there to be some barriers that we can explain by saying, well, because of these Indian attackers, we had to set up, I don't even know what they would be called, but not a parapet, but the equivalent of the Old West parapet, where you could stand on elevated ground and, shoot back at Indian attackers kind of thing.
I see. Okay. I guess because when I was reading it, my own kind of sense of verisimilitude was filling in the blanks a little bit from what I was seeing. And I was imagining like a mountain, a couple of mountain ranges. And, there's maybe one of those it has the entrance to the silver mine, but the town is kind of situated along that. And they've got the train tracks that they built through. And other than train tracks, there's really no way of egress or, they can't get in or out, through the mountain because the pass is treacherous or whatever. So I thought maybe like, again, I'm just kind of extrapolating through this version here, but I thought, well, maybe Long knows a way through a pass, into town that they don't usually monitor because it's not one of the primary ones.
So in an initial roadmap or synopsis I was writing, the pass I had in my mind, the secret passage, was just a natural formation within the desert ground. You know how I'm not thinking, like, when you think of the desert, it's not like the Sahara where it's just like sand dunes, right? I mean, we're talking about Arizona desert where it's just dry ground and it can be rocky and uneven. And in my mind, it was just a, kind of this crack that formed between two uneven parts of the desert surface that maybe, had some brush growing above it. So you couldn't necessarily see it if you were walking on this elevated ledge. You wouldn't know that there was necessarily a crack there because there was brush covering it.
Okay.
Now, initially it was just that Long or the secret passage led to some brush next to the saloon, and then you just emerged from the brush and you went through a side entrance. But then I thought, well, that's going to complicate the whole, climax where they're in the saloon trying to get out through to get to the secret passage. Why don't they just run outside? Why do they have to cut through anything, So, this is, maybe this is bad writing where I'm writing to make something happen that doesn't necessarily have to happen. So this may change. I mean, it sounds like it feels like I'm shoehorning something just for this dramatic, mirroring of, what happens in the past and happening again in the future with the widow and the child.
Right.
Did you see the parallel there?
I do now. Yeah, no, I see that definitely. I don't know. I guess we could work out the logistics, but I guess the main point I have is that it's not going to be this desolate area with some buildings lining an area that's just out in the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean? Because then it's isolated, but it's not secluded in any way. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I think it still meets. I think all the variations that you're describing make sense. They all kind of meet their criteria. And that's. I just wanted to make sure I understood that because it was a little bit of it's kind of stopped me. I'm like, wait a second, I don't understand. This is not movie town.
That's to be expected. I mean, typically, if I were writing the script and then sending it to you to look at, I would have taken the time to explain,
of course,
the layout.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So you want me to kind of dig into some of the specifics on this that I had questions on? Because those were just kind of like larger.
I say,
and cut.
No, that's fine. I say, do whatever, let's cover everything you wanted to cover. I'm just laughing because, I didn't switch the background on this particular shot.
Uh-huh.
So it still has the wrong show title on it. That's fine. Don't you worry about that.
We're just going to cover that area. Whose side's it on?
Yeah.
Let's write this movie.
Okay, man, I forgot to say my catchphrase. Damn it. I'll say it next time.
Yeah, you can say goodbye with it, I suppose.
That doesn't make any sense.
Goodbye from.
So, Brian, go ahead. What are your questions here?
Well, it's funny because one of my longest notes was about this third paragraph about, the snake oil salesman and the man being bitten. I'm like, I'm so confused. What's happening right now?
Right, of course. This is what every executive thinks whenever I send out a synopsis of my movies. What the hell is this?
Okay, well, I really don't have my notes don't really make sense here then, because you've already kind of covered a lot of those things. But I will say that, kind of in response to what you said about the some run, some walk, some spit.
Yeah.
I was trying to understand what that was about and why people were reacting differently, because again, in the movies that I've seen, they're all fairly similar. If one runs fast, they all have super speed. If one's strong, they're all super strong. And,
right.
I was trying to see if there were rules that you wanted to include in here, or if it's more free form. And also thought, like, is this an opportunity to really kind of play on, the motif of what a zombie is, and maybe a viewer's expectations of what a zombie is. Because as a viewer, I would expect them to behave a certain way. You know what I mean? Like, they're usually fairly dumb. They have one goal and they're going to go one speed, and we learn things about, them as we go along. Like, oh, if I cover myself in blood or something like that, then they won't come after me, whatever it is. But they all kind of follow a convention. And, this is just me riffing on this, and you can say absolutely not, but, I'm going to always bring you my different thoughts to the table. I thought, what if, like, we use the idea of a zombie to augment something about the character in death. So say for example, say you have a saloon player, right? And he's a saloon piano player, right? And he's doing his honky tonk thing, and everyone's seen all that, right? Well, maybe he's like the zombie that has like incredible hearing, and he can hear what no other zombie can, and kind of find where that, where the group is,
right.
and expose them. Or, maybe the town drunk, is wandering around doing his thing and everyone just ignores. Maybe he like drinks the blood of people, or maybe that's how he like gets re-intoxicated, is by killing people, by drinking them or something.
Sure.
I was just wondering if there's an opportunity to do something different. It doesn't seem like really random, but seems, could be interesting, like something that's played up on, in the intro and paid off when they become zombies.
Right.
And maybe the snake oil salesman, maybe there's something that happens to him because we recognize who that person is later. And if he dies, or he does die, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He gets the crap beat out of him. So maybe he rises, and, there's something about him that harkens back to what was set up, in his initial scene. Again, it's kind of like, I'll say munchies for thought. Not really made food for thought, but it's something that may spark an idea.
Sure. So, let's work backwards. I like those ideas. Those aren't bad. I think in my mind, where my mind goes is types of adversaries rather than specific adversaries. So, that's why I talk about running zombies and maybe, shambling zombies, and then zombies who have projectile spit. That way audiences can say, okay, it's not, they have some kind of expectation as to what the challenge is when our heroes encounter them. Like, oh, okay, well, this is a group of spitting zombies, so our heroes have to react a certain way, rather than, rather than having to first develop a character pre-zombie and then develop them again post-zombie and have them be special characters, if you will, rather than generic yet unique. Wow, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Well, when you said that, I was thinking about like 4 or 5 guys sitting around drinking beers, and they're also chewing, and they're spitting in the spittoon, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And that's the same group we see later,
Sure.
that are spitting zombies.
No, and when you talk about drunks, I mean, that works. I just don't know if it would be, and I don't mean to like pick apart your idea. I'm just trying to work through it, as I've heard it. I don't know if it would be kind of hokey that all of the saloon, like all of the piano players, let's say, have like are their own kind of group.
Yeah, he kills you with like really fast fingers.
Exactly. It's taking forever.
It sounds so good.
Yeah, exactly. Just turn around. It'll be the best massage of your life. On a side note, this is like a 30-second story. I was watching Tales from the Crypt, the movie, like the old version, right?
Yeah.
I think it's called Tales from the Crypt. I can't remember. Anyway, it's the one where the first story is this lady kills her husband, but it's Christmas time, and there's a crazy guy who looks like Santa Claus, who's dressed in a Santa Claus outfit, prowling around her house. But she's locked all the doors, right? Anyway, I don't know if you're going to ever watch it, so I'll just spoil it for you and everyone watching. It's a really old movie, so if you haven't seen it, it's your own fault. Anyway, so she thinks she's gotten away with her murder, but her kid, who wants to see Santa Claus, has woken up and lets this guy into their house who looks like Santa Claus, because this kid thinks it's Santa Claus. So now she's let this murderer into the home. But the reason I'm telling you this is the first thing this guy does is he runs to the woman who runs away, and she like tries to get to the fireplace to get a poker to attack him with. And so her back is to him, and he comes up behind her and is like, he's supposed to be strangling her from behind, I guess, but it just looks like he's giving her a really good massage on the shoulders. So I immediately yelled as I'm watching this today. I'm like, oh, the massage from hell, no! Anyway, I think that went over 30 seconds. Okay, so I will maintain. Let's put a pin in that idea, because that's not a bad idea.
One more mental image for that. One more mental image as you're writing the actual script.
Okay.
Just think of how the town prostitute is going to kill people as a zombie. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I don't know what rating you're going for here, but it could be real interesting.
What was the the female villain in GoldenEye? What was her name?
Oh God, I don't know. That was played by Femke Janssen. Is that her?
Yeah, but she squeezed you to death with her thighs.
On a top.
On a top.
Yeah.
Right, on a top. Like Xenia, right? Xenia on a top. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. She squeezed you to death with her thighs while she was having sex with you.
She got off on it.
Yeah. Anyway,
she hasn't been in a lot. We can get her into this.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. So let's work backwards, Brian, because here's the impetus of why I considered not varying, but diverting from the traditional slow zombie. So one of the main characters, one of the surviving characters throughout this movie is like an aging Indian who's like an indentured servant to the local bartender at this saloon.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I know this is, kind of stereotyping, but I liked this idea, right? He is like an angry drunk, right? The whole firewater stereotype, right? So he got drunk at the saloon. This is before the movie started, and he tore it up. And because of all the damage, he has to pay off his, the damages through working for this bartender, for the owner. And his tomahawks are above the bar, right? So anyway, at the end of the film, when they're trying to hold off the undead in the saloon, he's gonna drink, right? Because he figures, it's the end of the world or whatever, Maybe he's even bitten by then and he's just waiting to die. Yeah. So they're like, let him drink. So he drinks, and then he gets to have his little like blaze of glory moment where he's got his tomahawks and he's like, he feels like a young man again, killing the zombies, right? But it's not, I don't know if that scene is as powerful if they're just these slow zombies, and you're just like hitting them. These guys are coming through the door. Okay, But if you have zombies who, and they may not even be zombies. Like we can think of them as maybe, like they're not dead yet. Like maybe they are townspeople who have been bitten. They're infected, and now they're kind of going crazy, like they're insane, right? And so maybe that's like what happens to people before they become a zombie, before they die and then rise up as a zombie. So they're pre-zombie. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I get what you're saying.
Okay. So anyway, and I don't know if we're going to have spitting zombies. That's just, an idea. We could have exploding zombies, like, they're full of gas, or I don't know. Just make it up, Brian.
Bean zombies. What did you eat before your turn?
Exactly. You set those guys up. The transients is eating beans. Or the prospectors, like, I got our beans again. I hate beans. They're farting.
See, this is all second watch material, man. People aren't going to get all those references until they see it. Like, now I understand where that came from. Look at that. Studios love that, man.
I said I write complex scripts. Bean zombies.
Now, what is that? What this is called? Bean zombies?
Well, yeah, that's the subtitle. Epitaph, bean
Part
zombie.
Oh, it's funny. Yeah, it's as I was going through this, I'm like, how did he turn? Why did he turn? But you told me I'm not going to learn any of that. I'm not going to learn why they're turning and why they're dying, or I'm not going to learn if something's in the water.
No, that's not the point of zombie movies.
Are they going to try and turn it all or learn it all? Because I think at least in things I've seen, people know like, well, I can't get bitten, or they can't, my blood can't be exposed, otherwise I'm going to be turned. I think there's at least some basic understanding of what, what to avoid if you're trying to survive.
Sure, totally. So in a lot of these movies where, you're trying to, you don't want the audience to ever be questioning, like, well, I don't understand the rules. Right? So one of my favorite movies that does this very well is The Matrix. And there's this long sequence of it's like 30 minutes or something where they're explaining the Matrix and how the rules work and all of that. Yeah. And it's done in a very entertaining way. So we definitely have to have portions in this movie where, not only do we explain the threat of zombies, right, which is what the whole thing with the fort is. We got to establish why zombies are so scary, but then we also have to explain the rules of, how do you prevent yourself from becoming a zombie? And it's easy enough to write like the town doctor, Doc, or whoever, Doc Brown. No, that's from Back to the Future. That's not going to work. Unless I do a crossover where he's helping this, because they did go to the West.
You just see like a tail light of a DeLorean.
Exactly.
And then they just keep moving on.
Anyway, so yeah, we can just have a doctor or whatever. Like maybe he's got a wife who gets bitten, and we have a tragic scene where he is trying to save his wife, and he realizes, oh, it's the bite.
Yeah,
and then he won't leave her. He lets her eat him. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I love the idea of bringing originality to the zombie idea. So the first ones, I think it was 28 days later, right, that made them fast.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. People ate it up. They thought it was really cool. Just anything that kind of moves along the paradigm into something a little bit different, I think makes it really interesting. So I like that they're not all, but for whatever reason or however you're going to end up writing it, I like that they're not all going to be the same.
Okay.
Because
I'm leaning towards infected, like pre-dead people.
Mm-hmm. It's almost dead.
Yeah, close enough.
Bring out your dead. You know the reference?
Yeah, of course.
No? Yeah, all right. I'm not quite dead yet. He's almost dead. Pre-dead.
I feel happy.
All right. So from a plot standpoint, I'm guessing this is around Act 2, where it's beginning here, where the Marshal returns to the jail, which is at the center of a large town, to free Long and get him to safety.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know the history, even though it hasn't been explained in the movie yet.
Right.
But I'm trying to understand, knowing what we know about the Marshal.
Yeah.
And that he's obeying the law in terms of why he's not going to, why he's not going to just kill him, but he's going to arrest him, right? I would think that he's well within the law just to let the guy die in jail. You know what I mean? It's not like he's not even doing really anything that bad at that point, because it's a prisoner. He's done something, egregious. And I've got to look after the others, the free people in the town that are trying to survive. But he goes back and he frees Long. And I was like, this to me seems like he could just let him die at this point. So is there some sort of connection in your mind that makes him want to do that? Is there something that's going to get us there emotionally to say, this is a good guy and he's just trying to do what's right, regardless of his crimes and regardless of their history that we don't know about yet?
No. I just assumed it would be believable that a lawman would, get his prisoner, the guy he's been chasing this whole time.
Yeah.
It's been 10 years that he's been chasing him.
Right.
He wants to see him, brought to justice, not just killed, just randomly killed. Like he could have killed him before, right?
Right. Oh yeah, he could have. But here it's a little bit of a gray area. He's not killing him. He's letting him die, which is gray. But in my mind, I was like, well, is he also concerned that he's going to turn into an infected and have, that as his new, as his new normal or whatnot?
The way I was going to try to make it work is that at this point, they don't know what the problem is, right? They just think that people are going crazy. Something's wrong with this town.
Mm-hmm.
We got to get out of here. And he doesn't want to, I don't know. I mean, none of this is going to be explicitly said. I would just, wanted to build enough of a tone and hopefully the actor can bring something to this that shows his commitment to not only the law, but also
decency.
Well, not just decency, but the Marshal he's a driven man, right? Like, he's obsessed with the idea of bringing Long to a courthouse, seeing him tried, and paying for his crimes. And this is not it. I want it to convey that this is not the same thing. Plus, we can maybe establish that Long has a history of being able to escape from prisons.
Okay. Or I guess you could take the alternate tact, which is, this is one of the questions I have about the 15 years ago scene. So maybe I'll jump there for a second and then kind of come back. Is Long aware that the Marshal's family died in that incident?
I'm not sure. I'm not
Okay.
sure if we're going to have, in the flashback, maybe they've come across each other multiple times.
Right.
And Long has put together, what the problem is. But maybe not. Maybe, they both tell this story, and the Marshal reveals that my family died on that train.
Yeah.
And we can have a bit of remorse from Long.
Okay.
Rehabilitate the character.
Right. I guess one thing that to kind of set up their relationship early on could be like when he's in that initial scene with when the brother dies, could be like, could be long questioning him. Why don't you just kill me too, or something like that, and the marshal's like, I'm going to bring you to justice. You're not going to get off that easy, or something like that. You know what I mean? I'm being flippant here, but it could be something that is echoed again when he gets him out of jail. I'm like I told you, you're going to be brought to justice. One way or another, you're going to be brought to justice, and that's another reason he gets him out of jail. I don't know, just some thoughts to kind of set that up. But I think that the seed needs to be planted early on that. Sorry, I got dinged.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's happening?
How do I turn that off? The text message is popping up. All right. So in that same paragraph, it mentions here that some townsfolk run to the soldiers to be saved, but they are gunned down instead.
Yeah.
These are people who are trying to survive, right? These are not infected people.
Well, as far as we can tell, they're normal townsfolk.
I thought that was brutal.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. And then it says soldiers begin throwing torches at the buildings.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's probably like the harshest scene of the film to me. Yeah. I was like, so are they just basically considering Epitaph a loss at that point?
So
just
this
like burned down to the ground.
This is why the fort scene previous or prior is very important to set up correctly. Like, we need to show that one guy who, is infected, comes back to life, can lead to, within a very short amount of time, like, let's say 30 guys becoming crazy and starting to attack everybody, which is why they actually have to like form, the old Civil War lineup, and have like 3 rows of guys with rifles to bring them all down. I didn't write it here, but in my mind, I wanted to have guys with Gatling guns just mowing down the townsfolk as they're coming out.
I mean, I think it could be really impactful emotionally if it's done right too.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not just like from afar you're seeing them throw this stuff in. It could be like, these people, the real people coming out, right, trying to live. And I mean, that's tough. That could be a real tough scene to write and to shoot, but it could be really interesting and it could weigh on the viewer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like, what is it really saying? There's a possibility these people could have been saved, and they were that close to being saved, and yet they didn't. And that's a choice. And I don't know. To me, that was when I read the whole thing. I'm like, wow, who are the villains of this? You know what I mean? At some point, yeah, we have these infected people, but they're not really villains. They're victims of circumstance, right? Totally. The ones who are making the choices are the people who are deciding to end the lives of others, possibly prematurely, possibly that they could have saved. So I thought that was, to me, I thought that was the most interesting part that I read, just in terms of the action. It's like, wow, that's the emotional core right there to me. Like, there's a choice. You know what I mean? Anyway, that really got me there.
Yeah, I don't know what rank he's going to be, but the commanding officer of the fort is going to have a relatively sizable role in this. Like, he's actually going to have a character name, and he's going to have some dialogue. He's going to have to field, that question from one of his subordinates, like, these people were so close to being saved, and he's going to have to say something like very practical, but, cold, like, in a situation like this, there are no survivors, something like that.
Yeah. On the battlefield.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
But I mean, he's going to be doing it there. Right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
The needs of all
right.
right.
What was that?
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Oh, I can only see half your hand in this shot. There it is. Where's the tongue?
What are you talking about? So can we jump to the flashback for a sec?
Yeah, that's fine.
It says here that Long's brother is severely beaten by the foreman.
Right.
and so long retaliated, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a little preview into the first 4 pages of the script because, we had to get a little image for the background. But is this going to result in some like brain damage to brother?
Yeah. Not that that's necessary.
But, yeah.
I just thought it added a little color, and that's it, really.
Totally agree.
Okay.
Totally agree. I think that's cool.
Yeah, because his brother doesn't stick around very long, so it's like, hey, this is a convenient reason for me not to write dialogue for him.
I'll have some notes on him in the next show, but
yes,
I think it could be a really cool, like, even though he's not in there for long, now that I know he dies pretty early on.
Yeah,
I still think it could be really interesting and already pretty impactful.
Yeah, and of course we're going to see him later.
Yeah, exactly. Which will help inform what happens. Yeah, like I said, I have some notes, but I'll wait. I'll wait on those.
Okay, Brian.
Thank you, Renee. So when they taught themselves how to shoot pistols and rifles, I get that. How are they going to learn to speak English fluently?
I don't know.
Books.
I don't know how it works.
All right. We'll reach out to the internet on that one. Okay. So, question on the.
Okay, look. How about this? They're going to. They aren't always going to be a 2-man team, right? Like, they're going to hook up with some other bandits. They're going to learn, the tools of the trade. The Brotherhood of Thieves or whatever it is, right? And they slowly pick up English. You saw the 13th Warrior, right?
Nope.
Mother Lover. Antonio Banderas?
Nope.
Come on, he was the perfect Middle Eastern guy. With that accent. Fit perfectly.
Not a big fan of Antonio Banderas.
How did you learn our language? I listened! Or whatever he says. That's how they do that scene where he's like traveling with these Viking dudes. These 12 Viking dudes, Brian. And they're all talking in their Icelandic Nord language or whatever, right? And it's from Antonio Banderas' perspective, it's all just gibberish to him, but then like certain words start to become English until it all becomes English over time in this little montage.
That's cool.
So we'll just do something like that. Insert montage.
But not with him.
Yeah, dude, that'd be hilarious.
You bring in some Vikings. Renee, I don't understand what you did here, man. I don't get this at all.
Is it an anachronism, Brian? I don't know anything about the Old West. Could you research that?
Okay. Okay, so during one robbery where Long and his brother plan to blow up a bridge, why do they want to blow up a bridge?
Well, they don't necessarily have to. Well, they have to make the scene work.
Okay,
that's why I wrote it.
Before we go too far, to me, a robber of trains is going to cut off his source of income if he blows up a bridge.
Well, they blow up the tracks, right? A, it's symbolic of their hatred for the torment they went through building these railroads. But then B, I'm sure the railroads, the railmen, they had contingencies for problems with the tracks, right? Like that's why they had those push carts things that you saw in the cartoons. The guys who broke out of jail and they'd have the stripe outfits and they'd have those like carts, the seesaw carts.
I'm with you.
Okay. Weren't those made for getting down the track to like repair the tracks if there was a problem with it?
Absolutely. I'm not questioning the track. I love the idea of blowing up the tracks as a symbolic.
Oh, so you're saying because the bridge is too hard to repair?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought about that too in my mind. I was like, that is a little overdoing it. But I don't think when you're watching the movie, people are going to question this.
I think you can still have a very impactful derailing because they're not doing that in the scene that you're about to share with me next episode. The way that they're robbing the train, right? It's more. Yeah. They understand. The tracks. Yeah, they understand what to do now.
Right. Okay.
I mean, so they could still go overboard in this first version of it.
So in my mind, when this is, like I said, one of the iconic scenes, right?
Yeah.
This was going to be like they were still new at this. They didn't know what they were doing necessarily.
Right.
So there you are.
Okay. Sorry, I'm reading a couple notes real quick. This is where I was asking if Long knew about the that in the accident or the blowing up of the bridge, if the Marshal's child and wife had fallen to their death, and if he was remorseful. Yeah, I guess what I was trying to understand was the motivation of the Marshal after this, and how personal and hellbent he was versus how much he had a thirst for justice. You know what I mean? Like it could be just, going after this guy because of murdering a bunch of people, or it could be very personal, in which case as he's approaching Long every time, he's fighting this inner emotion to kill him, basically, because of the baggage.
Right.
The
latter.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, obviously you couldn't put that color in here, so I was just trying to understand that. So, one thing I was trying to understand was, after this, and we're back in the present day of the movie, Long remembers the secret passage he used to sneak into town and shares his plan with the others. I was trying to figure out why he would share it, other than, is he just trying to get out by any means, or is this an opportunity for some switch of character, some growth of character for him, that he's like, he's got an opportunity to get out and he's going to take as many people with him. I was trying to understand a little bit about where you want to take Long on the arc throughout the movie.
So I don't want him rehabilitated here quite yet. This is more purely survival.
Okay.
And, at this point, the other survivors are questioning, you're questioning the Marshal as to why he's dragging along a hardened criminal who's also a murderer, right? Who doesn't really care about any of them.
Right.
And so I think, the calculus that will go through Long's mind is, there's a real chance that either the Marshal will say, okay, yeah, let's just kill him right now, or one of these other survivors will kill him, because he still has these manacles on, right? His hands aren't free.
Oh, okay.
So this information now makes him the most valuable person in the group, because he has a way out of this town.
Mm-hmm. And is this is he using this somewhat as a bargaining chip to get?
Yeah.
Okay. To get released somewhat, so he can at least
flee,
at least try and flee.
Yeah.
Do his disappearing act. Okay. So they're not turned. So when the undead, or whatever you're gonna call them, the horde yank the widow and the child away.
Yeah.
And it says they devour them in front of the Marshal's eyes. So they get killed, or they just get destroyed at that point. They're not getting turned, right?
Yeah, they're just going to be eaten alive.
Okay.
I mean, we don't even necessarily have to see it, right? They can just be pulled into, the writhing mass of flesh that has filled the saloon. I just want the shot to be the same as, the Marshal, he's in the baggage car of the train. Mm-hmm. He's looking down at the hanging passenger car, and his kid is reaching, and then, it unhooks and they fall. Right. And so he's now in the saloon, or outside the saloon, reaching for the kid.
Right.
And the kid gets yanked back into the saloon.
Got it.
And maybe some debris falls in from the top, and we don't know what their fate is, but we can assume from all the chewing, the chewing sounds on the other side, that he's being devoured.
It would be nice if he develops somewhat of an emotional bond with the widow.
Okay, so this is all, yes, of course. So she's introduced early on in the movie. This is all of the supporting characters are not introduced here, Brian. This is why you don't know anything about it. But basically, yeah. So the widow and the kid, they have they've grown fond of the Marshal, who has passed through this territory and this specific town multiple times, and there's this kind of almost unspoken romance budding between the widow and the Marshal.
Right.
And maybe, the subtext is that maybe this is the thing that'll get him to stop chasing after his white whale and just settle down and, try to live the life that he was supposed to have 10 years ago or 15, whatever I said.
I got it.
So here's Long, once again, essentially being the cause. Well, he's not really the cause, but he's at least involved in another, horrible loss in the Marshal's life, which is why, we basically, I wanted the tone of their relationship to turn into almost like a buddy cop, kind of situation.
Yeah.
And this experience at the end brings him back to where he was at the beginning, or even 10 years ago, where he's suddenly reminded very viscerally of his personal loss with his wife and child.
Right.
Which is why, rather than let Long go, or ride off with Long, or whatever it's going to be, they gotta, have a shootout.
Right. Did you ever see, was it Star Trek First Contact?
Yes.
There's a scene in there where the Borg had boarded and invaded the interior of the Enterprise, and one of the crew members was in the process of being turned, and Picard just turns to him and shoots him, just kills him dead, because he's like, he shouldn't have to deal with that fate. And it becomes like this whole emotional scene afterwards between him and what's her name? Anthony Woodward? I can't remember.
Alfred Woodward.
Alfred Woodward. Like you didn't even try to save them. You just killed them. It's like I knew the fate that they were going to, endure.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, that might be something here if the girl is, not necessarily eaten, but she's turned and she's about to turn, and Long has to make a decision and shoots her, and it could just set the Marshal, whatever budding relationship that they're forming in this situation that's arisen, it could just kind of break that apart and kind of lead to that standoff or something like that. So there might be some emotional things that we can pick out of it, depending on which way you want to go.
Okay. Yeah. That can definitely work into this. If I sound hesitant, it's only because I already imagined that same scenario playing out with another supporting character that isn't covered here at all. But basically, the town sheriff, he's like a young-ish guy, like we'll say early 30s, and he's the guy who actually kills Long's brother. But this sheriff also is sweet on one of the burlesque dancers at the saloon, who they have to go, like, it's one of the reasons they go to the saloon, is to save her.
Right.
And, Long kills her because it looks like she's been bitten, but she hasn't been turned. She's, just like a normal person still. And he blows her away in front of the sheriff.
Right. Okay. Is her name Anna Bottom?
Anna Bottom. Yes. Yes, she is.
Svetlana Anna Bottom.
She sits on you. She doesn't crush you with her thighs.
Oh, geez. Okay. I'm almost done here. So then at the end of the movie, when he shoots the Marshal in the stomach, that's just because they're in the duel, right? So, the first time I read this, I was like, he just shoots the guy? The stomach, that's a crap move. Why would he do that? But then I'm like, oh, wait a second. He's in a last pistol duel. Okay, I get it now. But does the Marshal actually die at this point? Or is he in this other condition of pre-dead turning?
Well, I guess it's that. I guess he's, just an infected person. So he's not quite dead.
I see. Okay.
But that doesn't make sense. I guess he would have to be dead.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't been bitten, right?
Well, that's what I was saying. Well, maybe there was something along the way that exposed him that I don't know yet because I don't know the rules that you may flesh out when you're writing the actual script. Like,
well,
maybe
see, that's the thing, right?
Water the whole time, and that was what was actually turning people. You know what I mean? And anyone who dies at this point is going to become this because they've had that in their system. You know, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, does it have to be explained?
No, I don't think it does.
Okay.
But I think that for the second viewing, people would like to see, you know, something that they could at least resolve in their mind why it happened.
Well, I mean, I have this whole third paragraph, man, that gives you all these options. Just pick one. Just pick one.
You know, as I was reading, I was like, they're not going to actually shoot each other, of course, because I was kind of understanding that you were going towards that vibe of the buddy, you know, and something was going to happen out of this. There's going to be at least, you know, survivors' respect between the two of them, and maybe they agree to go their ways. And I was like, oh damn, he just shot him. Okay, but I like the ending. I thought it was cool.
Yeah. Here's the thing: I wanted Long to be a bad guy, right? Like someone who is selfish. You know, cares about the people he cares about, but you know, if you aren't in that circle, then you're nobody to him. You're just an obstacle, right? But I do want him to be rehabilitated in parts, and this is something I just kind of thought about at the end, and I still don't know how it's going to work yet because there aren't enough horses. But in the couple of pages that you've already read, he robs this young married couple on the train, and he takes her wedding ring, right? And he pockets it. And as he leaves the train, I had him leave the ring behind as a kind of like, well, he's not completely bad, right? He's going to leave it here for them to find later. Right. I'm thinking instead, he's going to pocket the ring and just keep it. And then in the town, when the train finally arrives and all hell is breaking loose, he'll run into that young couple again, and they're going to be, you know, part of the surviving group, and they're going to be able to get out with them. And when they leave, after he kills the sheriff or the marshal and all that, he gives them their wedding ring back. And then he leaves.
Yeah, there you go.
But
so there's some redemption.
Exactly. It's you feel good about him a little bit. But once again, I don't understand how that's going to work when he's basically, you know, telling them, hey, you know, let's leave through the secret passage. There are horses waiting for us. It makes sense if it's him and the marshal, right? And he thinks they have this like understanding now that they're going to get on these horses and go their separate ways.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense if there are 4 people who are coming out and there are only 2 horses. I could see the married couple being on 1 horse.
Uh-huh.
But I don't see
couple, Long and the sheriff.
Oh, the marshal, yeah.
The marshal. Oh, he kills the marshal, and then he gives the horses to the married couple, and he says, "But you're not getting the ring back." You know?
No. But it doesn't. Basically, let's say the marshal didn't have a change of heart at the end and decided, yeah, you know, like you said, survivors respect. Let's go our separate ways.
Yeah.
There are only 2 horses.
Right.
What was the idea here?
Yeah.
And let's say the widow and the kid survived. Now there are 6 people. I don't understand. I don't know how to fix this. Unless we show something like, you know, when Long and his brother rob the train in the beginning, they're actually dragging a cart with them, not just riding 2 horses. Or maybe they take their horses, they go to a secret cave, they pick up their cart of stolen goods from all of their recent train robbings, and then they go to this town.
Or a little more
fly
radical.
away on a giant eagle.
A little more exactly. A little more radical. It could be a town of small people.
What the hell, man?
Small people. A lot to the horse.
5 to 1, right? 5 people on 1 horse.
That was really insensitive, René. How could you say that? All right. Well, I think we can work that out. I think, you know, you can have. We'll make the logic work.
You see, this is the problem writing this way, Brian. And this is how I normally write, so I'm used to just garbage.
What?
No, what I'm saying is I hate an outline, an honest to goodness outline where all of this was like accounted for.
Fleshed out, yeah.
It would make this so much easier to write. Instead, we're going to be writing along, and it's going to be like, 110 pages. Man, we're almost done. This is awesome. And then the last 10 pages just messes everything up. And now you got to go back and where can I insert this new character that I just made out of whole cloth who brings a cart? Or, oh, hey, the snake oil salesman, he lived. And they all get in his cart, and they right away. You see what I'm saying?
Well, you can write a detailed outline. It's up to you, man.
Well,
However you want to do it.
I don't want to, though. That's the problem. Here's the thing. If you write the detailed outline, you might as well write the movie. Just write the movie. You're already writing it in it's like condensed form in an outline. So I'm just going to write the movie.
Cool.
This is what it's like to be friends with me, everybody.
And this is what it's like to be friends with me.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Well, there you go. I agree. It is pretty good to be friends with me. You may cuss now.
Yeah, you heard it in your mind.
Yeah, I did. That was for the 2 times that I made grammatical errors on the live show. Calling me out.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. That was insensitive. You're right. The only reason it came to mind is because you had corrected me on these things, pre-show.
I was leaving that out.
What?
I was leaving that out of this discussion. So one thing I really like about this, or at least what I'm gathering from it, is that rancor that the two kind of have, or at least that the Marshal has towards Long. I like unrelentless, or I like relentless rather.
Yeah.
Relentless, not villainry necessarily, but I like that. That's not ending, and death isn't even going to stop this, this rancor that he has towards this man, and I like that it's going to continue. I just think that's a really cool idea. I think it's a great way to end the film, by the way. I'm guessing that you've had that in your mind for a long time, that, he's going to go out and then come back, and then it was going to continue.
Well, you mean for the sequel? Like the
Marshal
is still chasing him as a zombie?
Yeah, but I mean, how many townfolk ended up really surviving? Who knows? It could be, or it got turned and they're going to follow him as well. I mean, this, just because the movie ends doesn't mean that everyone's dead necessarily. You can't count, especially if it is a large town. You don't know. There could be plenty of fodder for more movies.
Oh, no. Like I said, I already have the other 2 movies planned out, and they have nothing to do with zombies. So
space.
So this, yeah, exactly. So aliens come down, but that movie's already been done. So here's
very, very poorly.
This complicates matters now that I'm thinking about it. So the sequels actually revolve around the soldiers chasing Long, because they are trying to, like I said, they're trying to contain this very deadly outbreak of whatever it is. They don't know what it is, but they can't let it escape, is their reasoning. And so in the morning, as they're kind of cleaning up everyone else, they see the Marshal, who they find because he's eating the other horse. Essentially, there was supposed to be, in my original idea, there were no other survivors. It was just Long and the Marshal. And Long rides away because he doesn't need the other horse, so the Marshal's eating the horse now that he's a zombie. And the soldiers realize, we'll just call him the Major General. I don't even know if that's the right title. And we'll give him some kind of cool, kind of like biblical name, like Jedediah. Jedediah Robichaux. There you go. Major General Jedediah. He realizes, someone escaped on horseback. We need to chase them. So it becomes this kind of like A-team situation where the military is always after this, this guy. You remember the A-team, Brian?
Oh, I paid it. Yeah.
Anyway, so the sequels deal with different Hollywood monsters. So the next movie, Long finds himself in this town that's, dealing with constant Indian attacks. and this tribe, they you know, they basically pray to like their ancestral spirits for like the power to take out the white man, you know, the power of like the wolf or whatever, right? So they actually become werewolves. And so now that's the new movie monster that they have to deal with in the sequel.
Oh, all right. Cool.
Well,
that should be fun.
We haven't gotten there yet.
Let's get the first one done first.
Exactly.
Yeah, man, that's it. I mean, I think this is cool. You answered all my questions, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. And I know what you're saying, and I'm glad that we've kind of already discussed some of the points that may become issues. And I think if we just keep referring back to some of the specifics within the context of the pages as we go through week by week, you know, we can kind of try to solve those issues as we go through it. I mean, if you stumble on it, we can do it in a live show or whatever. We can have side shows, but now that I know where you're going with it, I think we can solve for those types of issues, because I didn't see that many. Just from a functional standpoint, I think it's fine.
Yeah. Most likely this first draft is going to be functional. You know, I'm not going to get all of the subtext that I'm hoping for, but we'll see. But yeah, having written this entire synopsis, I think this first draft is going to go a lot faster than my previous first drafts and other scripts.
Plus, we're doing a weekly show, so
yeah, there's that too.
There's that. Cool.
All right, Brian, is there anything else you wanted to add?
That's it, man. I'm excited. This should be great.
Great. Okay, folks. So the proposed schedule at this point is to expect new pages every Thursday, and then every Saturday to join us here on YouTube. Or actually, I don't know how fast I'm going to be able to upload these videos. So every Saturday, Brian and I will meet to discuss your comments if you've left any, and you'll see how it all turned out. Maybe by Monday.
Sometime thereafter.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as
subscribe.
So once again, the website is letswritethismovie.com, and you can always find us on YouTube. If you enjoyed this podcast, give us a thumbs up. If you loved it, give us a subscribe and hit that bell for notifications.
Tell your friends.
That too.